Chile here with Sirius Talis Moon. Jupiter is direct. Lilith is with Antares. Moon 19 degrees Sagittarius in the 8th house. This is why I'm not doing a talisman right now. If you have it in any different house that is not the 8th, the 12th, or the 6th, and Jupiter not in the 8th, the 12th, or the 6th, this is a talisman. So if you are looking at this from your location and it doesn't show Moon or Jupiter in any of the 8th, 12th, or 6th, you better venerate Jupiter in some way or call on Jupiter because this is a talisman, okay? Jupiter is unafflicted, exalted in Cancer. The Moon is in Jupiter sign, reception between the Moon and Jupiter. Again, you have to pay attention to the hour. Here is Jupiter hour. If you have Jupiter hour or Moon hour, this is excellent for talisman. And you should be not watching this episode right now, but doing your own talismans. I can't do it because the Moon is in the 8th house. And I don't want to put the Moon in the 8th house, but let's talk about judiciary systems and the connection to religions. With Aries so clock and Mars so close to forming out, we understand that particularly with Neptune Aries, the time where we could say, oh, this is our culture, is done, done. Ain't no culture if this is anything that is slavery or violation of sovereignty, any rape or slavery based, ain't no culture, ain't no law, ain't nothing that stands for that. It falls flat. It's crime against humanity. Is nothing. No God, no judiciary system, no cult, no left hand or right hand path. No, nothing can stand to support that. And the only thing that supports that is the stagnation in society that brings upon exile, colonization, persecution, mass deaths, financial, economic disasters, lack of sovereignty for the country, for the people. And remember, Mars is a sign of real estate, but it's also a sign of individual. And we have stories going from the Sami people, from the Inuit people, from the people that were persecuted to the north, the people that went through the journey of the equator. And they were, before they were at the Arctic, they were persecuted, at least the Sami people were persecuted to the north. And they have the stories. And one of the stories is that in various versions, a lady that was living as a tenant or living and was not owning of her own property, she was asked to cook a meal or to do something for the landlord. So she cooked a meal and then she gave the pot that was cooking the meal. And then the landlord wanted to violate her sovereignty. Entire village collapsed. No food for the village, no housing for the village. A village is persecuted, dead. Curse upon the village, and her spirit still haunts the city, or haunts the village, or haunts the town. And it's no way to appease this woman but to abolish all types of rape and slavery. Because people can be persecuted to the north, but then they go to the sea. In the Middle East, for example, people that live along the Mediterranean Sea, people who live around the Persian Gulf, and they go down with the judiciary systems, and they go down with the cultures, and they go down with their languages. Why? Because this is to commit the act to violate the sense of self and violate the sovereignty. And when people commit the act of violating sovereignty, what happens? They commit these acts upon themselves. Just like when I'm blessing people. I always bless people because I'm blessing people. Let's say I see a person and I think what blessing I would give to that person. So what blessing I would give to the people who are watching me right now? Sovereignty and alignment with frequency of love that is actually loving. Of course, as I have blessed the people around me, I've blessed also what? Myself, because I have aligned with the frequency of the blessing. But to harm sense of self, of person, to prevent person from having their I am, to try to subjugate person, is aligning with the frequency of rape and slavery. And the cultures that do that, ain't no judiciary system that can vouch for them. They have to make the even scale odd. But even that results in persecution. Also, think about the people that try to decide for a person who they are. This is aligning with, okay, with these people having somebody else decide for them who they are. Yes, if I come, I'm half Israeli, half Dutch. Okay, I don't like to talk about what other people, I like to talk about and bring things for myself, for my lineage, for my countries. In Netherlands exists such a thing where people see somebody as prostitute. And they thought we can legalize soft drugs, we can legalize hard drugs, and this will prevent crime because around something that's illegal, there's a lot of additional crime. But they tried to legalize this thing called prostitution. And this is where everything collapsed. Everything collapsed. And why? It's just like the square, and this is the square between Dana Balgadi and Beta Per Se. What is that square? The north people, Arctic people, whether it's Inuit or Sami or Arctic people, they tell of their stories that in the past everything was flourishing, but then people began not to share okay, it's like if I see a field where there is mallow, and I really love mallow. It's like I would put a fence around that field and say, this is only my mallow. There's no reason to do that. Because it's also not logical, because no matter how much mallow I will pick, I will not pick enough to not leave enough for people. But one thing we cannot behave as we behave with the mallow, and this is sex. Because it's something about sex where our own individual identity and life energy is existing. It's like we are, how to differentiate a mallow from a dandelion. And when we violate that, basically we harm identity. And this is where, if individual identity is harmed, what is the next harm? Familial identity. What is the next harm? Tribal identity. What is the next harm? National identity. And of course, the first harm is the connection to the land. and the connection for interconnectedness. Whether people call it divine, whether people call it gods, whether people call it love, whatever. And then no judiciary system hold water. One of the Supreme Court judges, okay, when they were accused of raping boys, what did they say? They say, yes, you are correct. Somebody recorded them saying that, yes, you are correct, but we forget we are the one who make the rules. Now, of course, making the rules is government, is not judiciary system. Okay, Charles Montesquieu, um, but he was not talking nonsense, because in his society, they are the ones that make the rules. When he was role as Supreme Court leader, he was referring to something a bit more deep state. But what is that deep state over-governed? By something that right now is being persecuted. Why? Because it doesn't matter who makes the laws. If the laws don't align, and it can be by chance, like we can say about the Arctic people, if I know from stories about Inuit society, where if a man would go to hunt, another man will have to make sure woman is satisfied sexually. Okay, so it was not necessarily coming from, how should I say, misandria, misogynia, or anything like that. They just saw it as another thing that everybody shares. But also women could not decide when they get married, when they get pregnant, depending, I guess, on the different tribe and different family. And this was something that was harming the society. Sedna stories like Sedna stories show us that. But Sedna story is already involving more things like natural resources. This is why when I wanted to venerate Sedna as astrologer, I wanted to buy something from Inuit culture, and I found myself buying a picture of Sedna, and it was someone from Estonia. And I did not know, but the same technique that they are going to use standard oil on the Dead Sea, and same thing we are going, is something that was done in Estonia, and it was not ecosystemic. And not only that, when this particular artist, I hope I have her name, because I had the card that she is from Estonia. I need that card. Probably have it in my email. And from every purchase, a donation was made to women that escape violence. Now, I don't believe much in shelters for women escape violence, because I saw for myself, it's not helping. Okay, it's helping only women that are aligning and don't do anything that they are not told to, like they listen to something that begins as guidance, but later it's kind of like they don't really have a voice of their own within that. However, in that case, who is harmed by those trafficking that transmute to oil? Of course, people, children, and women. And it was almost showing me that this Sedna veneration was needed in that area and regarding to what I was dealing with. This is also how come judiciary systems that are malleable. If the judiciary system has enabling of rape and slavery in it, what happened to the Talmud? How Jews were persecuted and are still persecuted, particularly 7th of October, all the teachings about the Talmud came. That there was rape of infants, that there were, and it came also from Jewish lawyers, Zionist Jewish lawyers. It came from within. And there was what? A judiciary revolution. They wanted to instill something like Sharia law, but from Judaism. I say, what? Yes, if you want to bring Holocaust, just say we want to bring Holocaust. You don't have to elaborate. Because those systems bring exile and persecution in Ausland, in the diaspora. Why persecution in the diaspora? What do the Europeans constantly say about people that emigrated from from Africa and Middle East, from various African countries and Middle East? What do they say? They say they escaped war there, but they come here and they still do the things that they escaped from. Now, regardless of the fact that Europeans have some things to fix in themselves, this is not false. So when the Jews were still doing these costumes of enabling rape, enabling slavery, they were persecuted in diaspora. And nothing to do about it. My grandfather's family was coming from diaspora, and in Hebrew there is a word for people who are coming from the diaspora. We say galuti. What is galuti? From exile. And yeah, it denotes of people that bring the costumes that they had there. Um, it is true though. So there is also an orchestration where the way Genghis Khan moved, and a lot of the intelligences moved this way and calls themselves persecution. And he looked at the beliefs of people and he tried to make the beliefs act against the people, or use the beliefs of people against them. Now here is the thing. The core issue is ritual abuse, rape, and slavery. Because that violates identity. If the culture, had sovereignty violation enabling beliefs and practices, they were being called to be purified or be conquered. By the way, 12th house is also cattle. And whether we eat from animal food or not, whether is also big corporations, like agrarian corporations could be seen in 12th house. If it's a big agrarian corporation. So whether it's cattle and the way cattle is treated, but also the way employees are treated in the big agrarian societies. For example, again, I don't like to speak of others without, or first speaking of my own lineage or country. In the areas that were around the border with Gaza, there was big agriculture. Amazing fruits and vegetables. I remember because of the war we began to buy local, and I saw a pomegranate the size of my head. Okay, and I have some Jewish ancestry, so I have a big head. I'm not Asian. Some people Asian, they have this small face. Not everyone, but it was a big pomegranate. But at the same time, people that were working in those fields, because they had to apply to international standards, and most of the things there were for export. Then people were coming from all over to work. Israelis that were, we are mandatory army service country, but Israelis were not able to withstand the might of work. This is why they were approved to take people that come from agrarian societies. So think about people going to Shaldak, to Duvdevan, to the elite units not being able to withstand agriculture, or not having a business model that could compensate them financially for the agrarian demands. Okay, it's nothing against people who come from societies or from agrarian societies to improve upon their salary. But we also have to look at why do we call them? Why is it approved to call them? because they were working in slavery conditions or close to slavery conditions. Now here is the caveat: the people they had a right to use the land for agriculture. They were not only going and constantly being bombed, but they were working with those people in slavery conditions. And this is one of the most difficult things, because when people embody slavery conditions upon themselves, it's very difficult to explain to them what they do wrong. I had this with bosses at work, that we had bosses were Virgo. And Virgo works themselves to death. Usually Virgo would have one or two things. One, they will have such disease that would knock them completely down, and then would become like shaman or holistic healer. Two, if it's woman, she will try to get pregnant, usually not successful, and then she will need to take a break and sometimes even change entire vocation. Beyonce, for example, Virgo sun, and before she had the blue ivy, she tried and had abortion and then took a year off. Now, Beyonce loved her job. She wasn't considering of herself enslaved. And not only that, she worked the hardest of her team, because she needed to be the leader and inspire everyone to work hard, causing a total collateral collapse. Virgo placements, Virgo ascendants, Virgo stelliums. Even lady that makes that, I was inspired by her to take the body butters and stuff like that and turn to talisman. I actually wanted to elevate it to oil paintings, but then there was a war and I had to do whatever I have. And this is Caitlin Kopok. She has Venus Virgo. There was a time where people said that she was doing black magic. Now I don't know if she's MK often or not, but I was like, before you complain about these things, check the Virgo placements, because this person might be enslaving themselves. And indeed she was. Well, one time she did a Venus in Taurus talisman. She said the first impression of her is a Venus Virgo, and it can be seen on the sphere and sundry side. It was, well, for the first time I felt like somebody else can clean, or I can relax first before I turn to cleaning. Actually, we had another occultist that received to do Venus Virgo talisman, because that would get them to want to do their course, and they were neurodivergent. So this is why I'm saying sometimes people are not intending to harm other people, but they need to look internally towards themselves. And at this time, it's colonialism o'clock, so there are cultures from all over the place. We want to ask, what about the agrarian society? People came, they were working in conditions that, to be competitive with the export market, the only margins would be slavery infused, and we cannot even say, oh, the people were the landowners. They weren't the landowners. They had rights to use the soil for agriculture. Yes, they had big houses, but they were constantly bombed. They were constantly bombed. And for them, if it was Palestinians, people coming to work, or people from Vietnam, doesn't matter. They just needed working hands. And they were working in the same slavery conditions. So you cannot say that this was the rich, fat landlord that wanted to enslave the people. Not at all this story. It's in fact the conditions of slavery that they accepted upon themselves, with all the big houses and everything. They were not paid attention that this was creating collateral collapse. And indeed, those areas were extremely susceptible to invasion, not just because of the vicinity to the border. But because of the economic dependency on big agriculture that did not allow margins, and is the same raison d'etat that made them, how should I say that made them not demand for change of the business model of their thing, again in the name of Zionism, in the name of this, but the entire area was looted for oil, for Standard Oil, in same methods as were used in Estonia. For example, if we would make that place a food forest, which we could, if we would dig half moons, this could be serving the food sovereignty of the region, which means Israel, Palestine, the Jordan River, and towards Mount Sinai, the entire Mount Sinai could have, with half moons, the way the forest, the Sahara, this could be not a desert with dunes of sand, and in fact, this is how this equator region should be looking like. Because let's say you are an army and you want to cross from Israel to Palestine. But on the way, you say to yourself, well, why not sit at this food forest, relax at the Israel-Palestine trail roads for travelers, where they have these rest spots. Eat Palestinian food at the border. But when there is rape and slavery, whether in Israel, in Palestine, or anything, in the judiciary system, in the law, in the way the market is designed, not good balance between work and rest, affecting also fertility and birthing, then we have now, I'm actually drinking something called re-milk, which is more tasty than actual milk. It's with the coconut, I think a type of coconut. The protein is not from animals. Again, I don't know if there were people raped and enslaved in the produce of this, because I cannot fool myself that there weren't. It's just like the way food is done today, and we need to change that. But this is actually very tasty. It's Israeli company, so I think it is from God. But I find it very tasty. So we want to think about wealth house and invasion as, of course, the hospitals, how people with mental crisis are dealt with, jails as well. Jails are not a place to ritually abuse people, rape people, punish people. Norwegian, for example, thinks about rehabilitating people. Again, I'm not saying everything is all fine and well in Norwegian. They have the course of resources in a roundabout way, which is no Salomon. And if there is no Salomon, it tells me that there were trafficked women and children. And we know this from the stories of the people in up north that were persecuted to the north, but they share wisdom that we can learn from them, rather than do mistakes that they already know to avoid, which is Sami people. Um, Yeah. Also, when we venerate this, there's another thing. When we venerate our origins, it's good to do that with discernment. If I think about, I don't know, what would have been the culture of my family in Sarne. So one thing, it was a village, and my grandfather preserved the art of always being around food and working around food. He was looking Irish, so he could get out and out of the ghetto to bring food. Um, but then I also take into account that there can be that there were things in the family that to discontinue the practices of the lineage, even in the price of them being forgotten, would have been preferred, because this is, for example, how come I was not wed at puberty, and my mom made sure I would not stay alone with my grandfather. Um, so many things to think about. But 12th house is also hidden wealth. Um, yes, 12th house is also hidden wealth, and this is where we may have resources for us that we didn't know. We didn't know. Um, for example, food sovereignty. What is the food of the area that I am at, even if there was exile? What is the food that's naturally growing in the area where I am at? It can tell me many things, because when I was living in Arad, there were thistles, and thistles are very good for endocrine system, because I was tortured. But then, unfortunately, I did heal with the thistles. I did heal with the passion fruit that was growing there and was calming. 7th of October of passion fruit, and it was using for calming. It helped me to calm, but later I had to flee, because of those oil trafficking things and dark occult. When I reached the new area, I found chrysanthemums, I found mallow. There were still thistles. And then it was time to replenish. Because I needed to eat green to purify the liver, to make the kidneys healthy, to an iron that absorbs. And so, but here is another thing. My Rao line is actually on exactly North Norway. But what this area is experiencing, we bombed the nuclear something of Iran. Very likely it's radioactive. It's like nobody talks about that, but it's very likely the truth. And according to the Slavs, namely Vyacheslav, which I learned about from Krasi Atasio, whom I learned about from astrologer Lada Duncheva, both Krasi and Lada from Bulgaria. And according to Vyacheslav, for radiant places, um, we need to eat red fruits. And red fruits, they grow where it's cold, which is basically where my Rahu, and Rahu is to materialize in the fourth house is housing. So basically, it already gives me a little bit of a hint of why and and why would I need these red fruits, basically to detoxify from radiation. There probably is already in the Middle East. It's just that nobody talks about it because the nature of radiation is Neptunian. It's wave-based, it's invisible, it's mysterious, hidden. It also means that the people that would stay in the equator, they wouldn't know that they have this radiation. And again, I don't have the means to travel at this point, but they wouldn't know that they have this radiation, and they wouldn't know that they need red fruits. And then it would be radiation that would be basically making the area clear from rape and slavery. Think about it, you cannot bomb a nuclear infrastructure without something leaking. Okay, common sense. Neptune in Aries is raison d'etre. We have to think for ourselves. Nobody would tell us that this area is probably radioactive. And radioactive, look at the beauty. Radioactive radiation. It doesn't care what is your land, what is your origin, what is your blood. Okay, Israel could bomb Iran. Do you think the radiation does not reach Israel? I remember in COVID, I was taking flight, morning flight, to Schiphol, and it was for reasons that there was no solution for homeless in Israel. I was actually sleeping at the airport in the bathroom, and in the morning I received, it was before Christmas, in the morning I received my welfare and a boat ticket one way to Amsterdam, not really knowing anything other than the fact that I'm also Dutch. And we were flying above the clouds. And I was so, at that time, I was barely able to eat. I was tired. And I was on a plane. And I look at the clouds and I see how there's no borders in the sky. Then one of the moments was, oh, this looks like snowy mountains. And I was like, God damn, this is the Alpines. It is what it looks like. When it comes to radiation, nobody is going to tell you that your area is radioactive. Unless they do want to evacuate you. They would prefer you to work to support their trafficking agenda. And day to day, it's not like you feel anything. But radiation travels across land. And there would be no research that would tell you if this radiation is safe or not safe. Because the scientists that would bother to alert have already been dismantled. And so radiation here is dissolving national borders. War is on attack. Because to bomb Iran is to nuclearly radiate but the civilians in the country that bombed Iran. Americans coming back to United States. Okay? They may be radiant. Nobody's gonna bother to tell anybody. I'm recording. מה? בסדר. אוקיי. בסדר. Mom, I'm recording. But Neptune also includes miraculous healing. Because for people that are afraid to go into exile, the land where you land, the natural things that grow on the land, if it is in cold countries, there will be red fruits. And those are detoxifying. But also, we get many cues from the land to abolish certain practices. When I was setting the stones in Arad in half moon shape to make basically to create through the stones an area that is more preserving of water. By the way, through me tending to that, I will find a company that is the only water company I saw in Israel that doesn't have fluoride in the water, and they try to make embargo on that company. And whatever they claim that they are harming the natural reserve, they do not harm natural reserve. They simply take water from where is water. But if we dig half moons around Ein Gedi water reservoir, we will not have to fear the area running out of water. Area only runs out of water when there is rape and slavery. It pollutes the water. And when I was setting the stones, I was seeing how women were stoned to death in that area. And that makes sense because it became a desert. This lush area. Wherever they blame or hanged it on the modesty of the women, it became desert. And we can see Egypt, most Islamic countries, although in Islam woman has her own land and so on and so forth, still they hang it on the clothing of the woman, and these places are desert. So to have her own land is very important, but also not to hang the competence at having good blood flow and life energy of the man on what a woman is wearing. Think about it. If you cannot see a woman naked and still run the energy through your body in a competent way, then all things you want to achieve in life are being diverted. Now, if you're going to blame the woman, let's say I see a very, very sexy and hot man. Okay? I don't look at him and say, please cover yourself, I cannot. When the life energy is flowing through from the lower chakras and upper chakras, everything is one, which means it's not diverting attention. It's a hard trajectory. And if we cannot honor one another's sovereignty and life energy, then nothing sustains in life or in the community. Also for where women, where we have warlocks and witches, then usually we have Ghislaine Maxwell's and Epstein's. Before I think if men will be loyal or not loyal to me, I think more of, for example, even when it comes to sexuality, of women wondering, will somebody stay, will somebody leave? Wait a second, embodiment. Because my body, my sensuality, it tells me if I'm in a place good for me, or if something is dissociated, if something is missing, if something is not fully embodied during intimacy, or if I cannot even reach intimacy, even though I may be very attracted, but don't feel like what something in intimacy is flowing. Maybe it's incompatibility. Maybe things in myself that I still need to heal, to be ready for, to assert, to claim. But when my mind is set, then I know where to look, and this is, yes, within. Now, if I'm going within, and something tries to prevent me, to assert me, to be where I am, to be embodied, it means I live in society that is cult-like, that is ritually abusive, that has rape and slavery residues in it all. Now I don't blame the man. I say this is a societal issue. And then within that society, there are the people that see that and tend to that and tend for that to be different. Amongst them, perhaps a partner can be found. So many things, this episode is packed with many things because Jupiter turned direct and we have just accumulated several months of eurekas regarding relations and the connection between philosophy, religion, justice, truth, and relations. Lilith is with Aldebaran, maintaining that our sovereignty, okay, that we are entitled to a paradise where we are not exiled for being who we are. Okay, Lilith was not to be above or below any man, and she should not be exiled from paradise because of that. It also tells us that monotheism from the Old Testament, what we have, is inherently imbued with rape and slavery residues that are to be completely denounced if monotheism is to sustain. It also tells us that monotheism came to being because of certain things to do with rape and slavery that were imbued, and even sacrifices and so on, child sacrifices. Think about Abraham before he became Abraham. And that those also to be completely denounced, completely abolished, if First Nations are to sustain their languages, their cultures. And it tells us that in those places where there is rape, slavery, where they harm people housing, where a single woman is not free, or where a single mother is not safe, in those societies there will be famine, there will be cursed villages, there will be persecution, there would be not enough seafood. And the curse of all over the town. Until the what? Jupiter is what we call the culture, but is actually the philosophy, the religion, the belief, the truth about relation to the land, to the people, actually takes precedence over rape and slavery residues that are anti-humanity. And it is per all the residues. With all their cultures, Uranus almost letting go of 27th degree, almost the 28 degrees Taurus, reminds us that the blame shifting, the gaslighting, the energy harvesting, the raping and then blaming the raped for their rape and calling the raped a whore, blaming that the raped wanted that, and so on and so forth. This brings dead bodies upon dead bodies. So this is very important. Venus separating from the sextile to Pluto is slowly progressing from the sextile to the square. And she will square Pluto from her home sign from Taurus, reminding us that embodiment is more important than anything that Pluto comes to bring here. Any industrialized boom is secondary to sense of self, Aries, but with Taurus embodiment, the ability to be, to rest. And we saw that after the industrialized boom, what did we have? Union strikes, labor strikes, the blue uniforms. Okay, where did they strike? They struck at Ford. Because on the one hand, Ford was bringing the ability to have a vehicle. And this is very to do with Jupiter here, where he met with Venus. The industrial boom made people able to ride, to everybody to have a Ford. And that's something good to remember, but at the same time, it cannot be facilitated by rape and slavery. Nike's also had a problem with that, and they had to adapt because when they abolished slavery, Nike was one of the first to take the blow. It's setting new standards to trade. And with Aries, people want more sovereignty, not less. Sovereignty cannot be accounted for by rape and slavery. But in Taurus, Venus squares Pluto is talking about being. In Aries, we still talk about doing, forging a path, the freedom to do something. And of course, the freedom to do something with our way. Each individual, man or woman, have their own way. We can only work together when our ways are aligned. And we cannot disinclude individuals. But in Taurus, we think about being, about resting, about embodiment. About our gardens. In Taurus, the value of rewilding my garden is more important than people that try to sell me fertilizers that are the natural growing crops. In Taurus, the right to roam at the Ein Gedi water reservoir and pick water for myself takes precedence over any factory that produces bottled water.